Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're looking at a place that basically defies all conventional logic of what a modern country should be. We're going to decode the mechanics, the history, and the incredibly surprising infrastructure of the Vatican.
I mean, think about it. How exactly does a 109-acre walled compound function as a fully independent nation? It's a literally microscopic physical space, yet it wields this massive, undeniable global influence. It's a fascinating paradox. By the end of our explainer today, you're going to understand the exact mechanics of how this tiny enclave actually operates on the world stage.
Section 1. Birth of a microstate, from the Papal States to the Lateran Treaty. So, the Vatican's current borders, they aren't some ancient, untouched reality from the dawn of time. Actually, they're a surprisingly modern geopolitical invention. For centuries, the Papal States were massive. They formed this huge territorial strip stretching right across the middle of Italy, literally from one side of the Mediterranean to the other. But then, in 1870, with the unification of Italy, all of that territory, including Rome itself, was completely lost. The Pope was left with absolutely no temporal sovereignty. It wasn't until decades later, on February 11, 1929, that a secretive, historic compromise called the Lateran Treaty was signed with Italy. That treaty officially established the Vatican City state, restoring a small measure of that lost sovereignty.
And the whole reason this tiny state was carved out basically comes down to a single principle. As it was said, today that territory serves to guarantee the Pope's independence. By establishing this sovereign ground, it ensures the Pope can just look out the window of his study in the Apostolic Palace and speak freely to the world, completely free from being subject to the laws of Italy, or, well, any other nation for that matter.
Section 2. Vatican versus Holy See, the territory and the authority. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it visually demystifies one of the most frequently confused aspects of the Vatican. On the left side, you have the Vatican City State. Think of this as the physical dirt, the actual buildings, the 9-meter-high boundary walls. It provides the sovereign territorial base. But on the right side is the Holy See. The Holy See is the actual spiritual and diplomatic authority that governs the global church. So the physical city just provides a protected, safe home base for the Holy See to operate from.
Because of this incredibly unique setup, the Vatican operates as a collective absolute monarchy. It's governed entirely by the Pope, who literally holds total legislative, executive, and judicial power, the whole shebang. And to solidify its status as a real, legitimate nation, it comes complete with its own flag, its own anthem, and get this, Latin as its official language.
Section 3. The temporary citizens, the rarest passport in the world.
Okay, so we've talked about the land and the authority, but what about the actual people living behind those boundary walls? 44. That represents the mere 44 hectares, or 109 acres, of territory the Vatican occupies right in the heart of Rome. To put that physical scale into perspective, it is incredibly microscopic. You could comfortably walk across the entire country in just a few minutes. Now pair that microscopic footprint with an even more staggering figure. 400. Fewer than 400 people actually live within these walls. It's a staggering, tiny population scale that really makes you wonder how on earth they managed to run a sovereign state with fewer people than your typical high school graduating class.
Well, here's exactly how they do it. Functional citizenship. So, the crucial point is this. Vatican citizenship isn't something you acquire by being born there. It's granted exclusively to those who actively serve the Holy See, like cardinals, diplomats, or members of the Vatican security services. And here's the kicker. It is strictly temporary. There's no such thing as a lifelong citizen here. Once your job is done, your passport is revoked, and your functional citizenship ends. The citizens exist purely to serve the objectives of the papacy.
Section 4. Inside the Vatican walls, the mechanics of a microstate.
Despite its incredibly small territory and temporary population, the Vatican actually possesses all the essential mechanical elements of a real functioning country. This includes its own legal system and courts of law. It's a fascinating contrast, right? I mean, we tend to think of this place purely in terms of spiritual authority, but these courts function daily. They handle everything from mundane traffic offenses all the way up to serious crimes. People have actually been judged and handed 2- or 5-year prison sentences for violating secrecy and breaching the confidentiality of reserved information. And yes, they even have an actual physical prison located right nearby in the Gendarmerie building.
And beyond the legal system, they have all the daily amenities you'd expect in a nation-state. Within its borders, the Vatican operates its own post office, and they even issue their own original stamps.
Plus, they've got a railway station, a radio network, a printing press, and a pharmacy. It's a completely self-contained ecosystem.
Of course, any functioning state needs an economy, right? The Vatican has its own currency, which is tied directly to the euro. But here's why this really matters. Maintaining that currency requires strict regulatory compliance. It officially ties this ancient absolute monarchy to modern European Union and Italian financial regulations. They don't just exist in a total vacuum.
Now here's a fun fact. The Vatican's physical infrastructure actually spills way outside those walls. After the Lateran Treaty, Italy generously allowed several places and buildings located right in the middle of Rome to remain Vatican property. These are known as extraterritorial entities, and they function basically like foreign embassies right on Italian soil. This includes beautiful, historic sites like the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, the Lateran, the Chancery, and the San Callisto area.
Section 5. The global footprint. Massive influence from a microscopic base.
All right, let's zoom all the way out now. 184. This represents the 184 apostolic nunciatures spread across the world, and this brilliantly illustrates their vast network of global diplomacy. These nunciatures function exactly like embassies in the secular sense, ensuring the Holy See has a direct, active presence in almost every single corner of the globe.
Each one of these 184 embassies is headed by a nuncio, who acts as the Pope's highest permanent representative abroad. The nuncio holds a highly influential dual role. On one hand, they act just like a standard ambassador, helping to shape secular politics, culture, and maintain contact with foreign governments. But on the other hand, and this is absolutely crucial, they're the vital point of contact for the local Catholic bishops in that specific country. They effectively bridge the gap between global statecraft and local church operations.
Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. How does a microscopic physical space, measuring just 109 acres with fewer than 400 temporary citizens, maintain such an outsized cultural, diplomatic, and political influence on the modern world? Well, it all traces back to that brilliant foundation secured nearly a century ago by the 1929 Lateran Pacts. That single, historic agreement provided the perfect, protected autonomy for the Vatican's enduring reach today and well into the future. It really leaves you wondering, could any other institution in the world ever replicate this incredible model of micro-sovereignty? Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.